join me in the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Here. Jason Hansel. Here. Here. John Truscott. Here. Lisa Truscott.
Here.
Brad here. Do a motion to adopt the agenda. So moved. Support. Moved and supported. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Agenda. First up is our presentation by Mr. Beck. Ready?
You're ready. I can ask the rest of the curriculum team coming up. Once again, I'm Brian Decker. I'm the Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment. I've heard people call that the CIA lately. I didn't hear that before, but I don't know about that. We were planned, as the board knows, we were planning on, I'll stand up here so I can. My joke was I could look like a normal heighted person. We were planning on presenting to you in June. And then the day before the presentation, I came out with COVID, and that slowly made its way through my family, my wife, and 4 children, and that was a lot of fun in June. And so we all got healthy and had a great July, and we're back, and we had to knock the cobwebs off. We had first given this presentation to our building leaders back in April, and so when we met to talk about it, we said we got to knock some cobwebs out. Here's been 4 months. So appreciate the time to do this. Appreciate your patience with us tonight. It's always a privilege. So. Without further ado, basically what we're here to do tonight is to fill in the board on the growth in the curriculum department over the last 12 months. And that's really been driven by a lot of things in education and our world right now by pandemic response. We know that the pandemic presented bigger challenges than we had ever seen in public education, at least from our careers here. And we knew a systemic problem needed systemic solutions. And so when it came time to talk about how can we affect change and do things differently here and help our teachers and our students and our community respond to the pandemic, we didn't have to reinvent the wheel. We know of, tried and true practices of hiring curriculum specialists, instructional coaches, and so we just happened to have some master educators, master teachers amongst our ranks that fit the bill, and we were able to create 40 positions of curriculum specialists and make that happen. It's been a wonderful, that happened a year ago, probably to the day, right? It's been exactly 12 months. It's been a wonderful journey. We knew that we'd have a lot of growth to do. We all believed in the project, but we also knew that none of us had participated in it, so it was going to be a lot of growth, a lot of learning, a lot of planning. Yet, it's kind of that old cliche of like flying the plane as you build it. You're going to have to do some good things at the same time and affect some change and help some folks too. So really want to talk to you tonight about what that journey was like, how we grew, how we leaned on area schools. Again, this is not reinventing the wheel. Schools our size typically have the curriculum departments with specialists, with coaches. And sure enough, school districts like Okemos or Hull, Grand Ledge do have these apparatus. And we met with them, invited them over, talked with them, and we're humble in that way and really tried to accelerate our process so that we could be turned from novices to folks who could help people kind of overnight. And so tonight is really about a relaunch for us. This is year 2, but really now that we have a bag of tricks to go to, this is really kind of the relaunch or year 1 for us. I do want to introduce and just kind of explain kind of our 4 specialists. We did split them 2 in the high school and middle school, so 2 secondary and 2 elementary. At the high school level, we split them by subject area. So the STEM, the math and science was Mrs. Laura Forback, who took on that role. In the humanities, so the social studies, the English, that was Jody Kaler, who stepped up and did that role. And then at the elementary level, we again had 2 different folks there that came in as specialists, and we split it kind of a different way. Mrs. Courtney Craig Novak is our academic specialist, and then Ms. Taylor Bouchon is our behavior specialist. And they've been already, just again, we're learning, but they've been so vital to us in these past 12 months as we've responded to the pandemic. So once again, we're here tonight to let you know what we've been up to, how we've done it, and what our big plans are for the future.
So when we were getting started, we were coming from our classrooms where we were experts like Brian said, in our teaching philosophies, but we had a lot of learning to do when it came to coaching. And so we did a lot of research on different philosophies out there for different coaching practices, and we purchased some books that we did some book studies around so that we could learn some different strategies that way. But our main adoption of a coaching philosophy here was called cognitive coaching. So cognitive coaching was a training that we attended that was 8 days throughout the school year. And so that was quite an investment for us to be away from the district for 8 days, but it has turned out to be an incredible investment because we've learned all these strategies that we're taking forward in our curriculum department. So moving forward, and this is kind of an infographic that has lots of different pieces on it that you can see, but moving forward, this is what we're going to be using as our philosophy that we use when we work with teachers. So one of the main pieces that I want to bring your attention to are the 5 states of mind. And so the 5 states of mind here that we learned about are craftsmanship, efficacy, consciousness, flexibility, and interdependence. And so those 5 states of mind are characteristics of an individual, and when they're teaching, we learn different ways that we can work with them to pick up on if they are really high in craftsmanship or feeling low in efficacy, and how we can work with them to boost their efficacy or whatever it is that they're missing. We learned some different road maps, and so you'll see the different maps here, some planning conversation maps and reflection maps that we use so that we can identify those states of mind and really pick out what we need to do for this particular teacher that we're working with. The other piece that we came up with from this training are the 4 support functions. So the 4 support functions are coaching, collaborating, consulting, and evaluating. We're not doing evaluating in our position, but the 3 other ones, the coaching, collaborating, and consulting. The coaching is the one that this whole training was about, and the whole focus of that is to mediate thinking and to create self-directed learners. So instead of us always coming in and solving problems for teachers and telling them the solutions and ways that they can fix their issues, helping them to become self-directed thinkers so that they can kind of find their way, and that whole kind of thing of teaching a man to fish instead of giving them a fish situation so that they can figure that out. The other 2 that we'll be focusing on are collaborating, which is when you're working as a co-equal with someone and kind of bouncing ideas off each other, whether that's with one teacher or with a team. And then also consulting. And so that's where, like Brian said, we all came from 4 different areas of our district with specific expertise. And so during that consulting, we'll be bringing in our expertise and giving some advice and acting as a consultant with teams.
So early on in the year, we knew we had a lot to learn. We were all new to this role, and we had reached out to another district and some other coaches. And one of the bits of advice that we received was to create some sort of coaching summary or spreadsheet or a way to keep track of what you were doing. And what we found is that it served a lot of great purposes. It was a great way for us to make sure that we were supporting vertical alignment. So as I'm working on something at the high school and logging it in my spreadsheet, people who are working with the elementary buildings are also doing the same, and we can kind of look back and forth and see what projects we're working on, what ways we're helping teachers. This tool also helped us to reflect. So individually, we could, at the end of the month, go through our notes and reflect on the things that we had been working on and track those. And then it also helped us to reflect on what other people had been doing. So there were times where I was going to start a project in the middle school, and I noticed Courtney had already been working at Herbison Woods, and then we were able to collaborate and connect on that. And then finally, I just think moving forward, this is going to be a great tool for us to look back on as we look at already. I've looked at what we did in August, what did we do in September, and hopefully we can use that as a guide for us to be able to make sure that we're strategic with our time and our efforts, and that we are planning our goals based on some of the work that we did the year before.
So due to the newness of these positions, we used the feedback that Jody was just referring to, but we also used informal conversations as well as more of a formal way of surveying administrators, teachers, other stakeholders. And what we realized is we had not created that valuable mission statement, that path that's going to keep everyone on the same page, that common language. So we spent some valuable time and sat down as a team and created our mission statement. And really our mission statement hits in two different areas. It really does support the teachers in giving them that coaching aspect of it, but it also puts a focus on student achievement as well. And our vision, we came up with 3 main statements. By spring of 2025, we would like all school buildings throughout DeWitt to feature a strong culture of achieving student success through planning, reflection, and analysis. We would also like staff at DPS to think critically and demonstrate flexibility within their practice. And lastly, student achievement will have improved in 2 categories, by benchmark assessments, but also looking at reports by teachers and students to see the attitudes and how they felt the quality of their instruction looked.
In addition to the cognitive coaching training that Taylor mentioned, we also took Taking the Lead by Killian and Harrison as kind of our primary handbook. It is a book about coaching that describes the 10 roles that instructional coaches can have within a district. And we wanted to kind of formalize some of this input because in addition to relationships with teachers, strong relationships and understanding with building administrators is critical to the success of a coaching program as well. So we pulled our building principals and asked them what their priorities and goals were for us, where they wanted to see most of our time and energy spent. Of course, there were some differences between secondary and elementary, as you would expect, but these were the top 5 really, because there was a tie for 3rd place, roles from those 10 that were identified as being what our building's leaders would like to see. The first one was instructional specialist. An instructional specialist role is one where the coach is working with instructional strategies and curriculum to make sure that you're meeting the needs of all the students in the classroom. In 2nd place was a curriculum specialist, understanding and leveraging the adopted curriculum and making sure that teachers understand how to do that well. And then in 3rd place, there was a tie for data coach. That's part of the processing and understanding of all that data that we talk about all the time, and WPA and all of our M-STEP results, helping to parse those pieces of information out so we know what we're doing in the classrooms. Resource provider can be finding resources, but also creating them with teachers, so that's more of that collaborating or consulting role. And then classroom supporter means being within the classroom walls often and frequently to make sure that we are modeling those high leverage strategies and that we're working with students alongside of the teachers.
All right, so now that we briefly shared with you where we've been, what our processes have been like, that growth, that learning, that planning, that doing, goals for 2023 and beyond, we want to talk a little bit about that. And I did put curriculum and curriculum mapping up there first because to me it kind of lives in both worlds. Something that we've been doing since 2010. That's maybe the longest lived initiative that I'm aware of in a school district that I've been involved with. I was a teacher here, young teacher, not the older guy you see before you today, but when we started that, and I still remember those initial meetings, and we're still doing that today, and really enacting that guaranteed and viable curriculum, making sure that we can guarantee that no matter what 2nd grade class your student is in, what 7th grade math class your student is in, they've got high efficacy, stuff that connects to the standards, high quality instruction, and the backbone is there that speaks to the state and national standards, etc. And a goal for a long, long time has been, and I've been in a couple different districts that have had this Atlas curriculum mapping, and it's always a goal just kind of beyond reach to say, hey, at some point we could kind of pause where we're at, select certain things and make a live facing, public facing, so all of our stakeholders, all of our teachers, all of our parents and community members can kind of see the scope and sequence, the unit calendars, the learning objectives, those type of things, and make that a public facing site. And I'm happy to say that after 12 years, now that we had a team that was dedicated to that type of work, they were able to do that. Now it is a work in progress. We're still polishing up some maps here and there, but by and large, I think you'll see the lion's share of what we do here at DeWitt is accessible to the public through that portal. So there's a link in the presentation that was posted on the website tonight, and if you navigate through our curriculum, new and improved curriculum website, we can talk about that, you can find that link as well. So I thought that was critical for transparency, but also for self-accountability, all those different pieces. When you know someone's going to be seeing your work, you know, it gives a little bit more kind of import to what you're doing there too. So that's one we're very proud of and will continue to do, very important, especially in post-pandemic and tying these things into the pandemic pieces. When you have a disruption as big as what we had, it's really good to go back to brass tacks. I think you all found that when you sat down with folks and got back to the table with colleagues and said, okay, we've been through this disruption, where are we at now? What new standards have come down? What can we do to improve? And I feel like we got really good feedback from staff, and it was kind of just in time type of work there as well. Next piece is kind of that launch in the fall, which this is a part of, to be presenting to the board and other stakeholder groups. As I mentioned back in April, I believe, or just back from spring break, we presented in this room to the cabinet, to the building leaders and other leaders in the district, to kind of talk about, hey, same idea, this has been our journey, this is where we're headed. And then we hope to, in the process of the month here, get in front of building level teams, staffs, and talk to each staff about the same type of presentation, where we've been, what we learned, where we're going, type of thing. So just to make sure that everybody knows what services we can provide, how to access those services, you know, the different levels, the coaching, the collaboration, all those different pieces there. I think that the wider we have understanding under that umbrella, the more good can come of that. Next piece would be, you know, when we look around and see need right now, this has been an incredibly tough time for building leaders, not just here, but around the area, state and nation, the world really. I've seen more stress, we've seen more turnover locally and throughout the state and country. We've been very lucky to have a lot of continuity here in DeWitt, you know, but we want to make sure that we're supporting our building leaders that have been very stretched to the limit in terms of their bandwidth and capacity. And so we want to start monthly check-ins with them to make sure that we're hearing their needs organically from the building leader, meeting with their teams as well, so we hear it not just from the leaders, but from the actual leadership teams and from the teachers themselves. And that we can then become that kind of like connection that can take these bits from each building and make sure that we have a cohesive, cogent whole, and make sure that we're all moving and pulling in the same direction, despite what individual needs the building has. We need to see where those fit and how we can help make those addressed and better. And then lastly, another piece here would be new teacher orientation. This group has taken that on. We've always had new teacher orientation, but it's been quality. It's been kind of a one-off day where we get a full day of really key information about systems and personnel and building maps and those kind of like basics about, hey, you're a new teacher, new staff here, here's what you need to know. And then a lot of times it's been a one and done, and then we turn over to a state-mandated mentor, teacher mentor. And that's good, we want to continue that, but we thought we would also turn that group into more of a cohort. We're going to try that out this year, where for a year or two we get them together at different times after school to get them subs and get them release day, that type of thing, maybe 2 or 3 times throughout the year. And those new staff have needs, learning needs, social, emotional needs, needs as a colleague that no other cross-section of teachers or staff have. And we really want to get them together in a room, create that sense of team, make sure we're hearing their concerns, giving them answers, giving them resources, and that will lead into, hopefully, increased retention. We also know we're living through one of the most kind of dire teacher shortages in our lifetimes. We've been lucky enough here in DeWitt, I guess, with the kind of profile and quality of our schools. We're still in a situation where we're mostly hiring high-quality teachers from other districts. We haven't been in a situation where we're too much having to emergency certify people and go down that road. But we definitely, when we get new staff, we hire the new staff, and I've been amazed at the new teachers we've hired the last few years. Our principals have done a wonderful job in some tough circumstances, and we want to hang on to those folks. That might be the number one thing that's important, is to recruit good staff, let them do their work, facilitate growth, let them be self-driven employees and thinkers and teachers, and hang on to them. So that's a key thing that maybe seems simple, but we're planning on making it more than just a one-off orientation. We're going to try to have a cohort approach to the teacher staff orientation. So that is our presentation, kind of in a nutshell there. So I guess at this point, the board, if you have any questions or comments or suggestions, we'd love to hear.
Well, thanks for coming in. It's very helpful. Good to see all of you. So when I first joined the board, I was really surprised that it didn't have great horizontal or vertical alignment mapping. Is the right word. Are you feeling like we're, because it was you mentioned the issue of like the second grade class, you may have two different classes teaching different things. Is that now addressed? Is that not here?
Well, I would be very careful about saying that's a problem that's not there anymore, that's not something we still need to grow. But I know what you're saying. I think it was, I've talked a lot over the years, that in the 1980s, this was a Class C district, small town, it's grown. In some ways, we've got silos within our district that have grown with it. In other places, I really felt like curriculum was one where like those efforts were happening, but it was well-intentioned from principals when they had time. You would get teachers subs and they would come out and try to be those specialists while also teaching your class or being pulled up to check on their class and those things. So there was a strain on folks, but they have people who are like many districts our size and kind of our weight class, I guess you call, there to do that work and have that intentionality and have that time and energy and expertise to do it. I think we've done more in 1 year, even while we were learning, than maybe the previous 5. That's nothing against the folks that were doing their best. And that was some of us, right? While we had other jobs. But I think there's no doubt, I just see it on teachers' faces and the feedback we're getting, that this team has been incredibly helpful. And that has been one of our big goals last year, as you know as well, to make sure, especially as we came back from COVID, we were vertically aligned. These folks were key in kind of leading some of those meetings. The second grade staff needs to talk to the third grade staff because the learners that are coming up to them are different. You've seen that again, not just in DeWitt, but all over the country. So I do think we've been
have the big literacy initiative too, which will help with consistency and.
So again, I think the end goal is that we've got wonderful teachers, we've got wonderful resources, wonderful students and parents, and just make sure that all arrows line up, right? That we become greater than the sum of our parts, and that's through coherence. That's through code. You can even say those kind of C words over and over again, and I think the team is key to that.
Do you feel like this team is able to meet the needs of the teachers, like the requests that you're getting for help, and to be able to work with the teachers that want you to work with them? Or are you like in such high demand that you couldn't possibly get to everyone? How does that work?
We're busy.
Yeah.
We're busy. There's a lot of demand, and that's wonderful. And I hope that continues to grow. I think we're finding our pace. Through the learning that we've done, we've learned to prioritize, and so I think that this year we'll find ourselves making sure that the time that we're committing and the yeses that we're giving are really in line with those goals.
Is there any part of the model of coaching and what you're teaching people that they then can pass on to others? Or
I don't know if they're always aware exactly of how we're guiding them. So sometimes you ask questions. So if I meet with a teacher, I'm asking them questions. I'm getting them to think about their own solution to their issue. And sometimes you leave them and like, thank you so much. Like they think that I solved the problem. And really, I didn't. You solved it yourself. You just need someone to talk through it. It's kind of like in life, right? When you have like mini therapy sessions, right? Because you're life. Like sometimes I'm having like an issue at home and I have to just talk through it, and then I'm like, oh.
We're not licensed therapists. The lawyers.
No. But just having
it's not
someone.
that kind of model where.
I mean, I think in some ways, some of the consulting and some of the collaboration that we're doing is planting
They're
those
building
seeds.
capacity with the teachers themselves and then
Yeah.
with the network as well.
Yeah.
I would add to that too that, and they didn't show their website, and that's when they built a really nice website that teachers can access and see like, okay, I'm having an issue, kind of again, refresher on what we do, what services they offer. And so there's some of that where a teacher reaches out and says, hey, can we have a day and meet and talk, or this kind of that buzzword of thought partnership or that type of thing. But then there's also other times where it's like we can tell from data reviews that this is an area for growth here, and we're going to get a department together and look at the, so it's going to be more directed from us.
So you're proactive, Andrea.
Proactive, and then it might be a situation where there's even times maybe where we have a young teacher and they have a lot of growth to make, and we're going to partner with somebody who's young and has a lot of growth and that type of thing. So there's various ways we get involved. But yeah, I think as the year went on, it got busier and busier, right?
And
It's a good kind of, it's good.
I think our rules will adjust as we go too, because right now we're coaching teachers along the way, but we also, as Mr. Hanselman referred to, we also need that bottom line foundation of what we're doing in the classroom to be consistent across the grades in order for us to have something to coach from. So I think once we have that foundation really solid, then we can fine tune and adjust and enhance even more than what we are now.
One of the slides you were talking about your vision, and I was just wondering how will you measure that to know whether you achieved that, or are there things in place that you can track of the data?
Yeah, that's a good point. Good question. We talked about quantitative, and so the state has, mandated, and that's something that we were in the process of anyway, so we were well prepared for that. But to be looking for growth trends, or just what trends are there in our key metrics in our K through 8 NWA, which we've spoken to the board a lot about. The other piece is we started this year doing more qualitative, just kind of perception data. That was one thing we did, survey staff and principals. We want to do that annually to see where they're at, how they're feeling supported, but also kind of, and we'll have to fit it into, because I know that we've done some perception surveys in the past. It's been part of the accounting work. I know we did some different type of perception data this year with the strategic planning initiative. And so that'll probably have to, this actual, we're trying to get into, like, what is your sense of the state of the culture of learning? Those are tougher things to put your finger on. And we'll probably develop, Likert scales, things like that, to get a baseline and see where we grow from that.
To kind of follow up on that, what can we expect in terms of reporting back on that data to the board?
Yeah, I'd love to, once or twice a year, have our team come, and since me, I've been the Lone Ranger here, but, we can definitely, I think sometimes too, when I've presented the data, it begs the question of, okay, so what? What are you guys doing about that type of thing? And that's where maybe a team presentation, or if I can, maybe showcase more of the work that this team and also building teams are doing, to give you a sense of, okay, we have this data, we're buried in data, like what are we doing with it, how are we making sense of it? I think that's, again, as much as you like, I can come and talk to you.
I would say that I've appreciated the presentations over the last, 2 years that we've had on the NWA data.
Maybe I should quit now?
I would like to see that continue. Twice a year, I think, makes a lot of sense. But to me, I think those are great things to have on there and a great thing to put out there. But I agree, let's have a measurement, but I'd also like us to kind of see what that is, not only from the effectiveness of your team, but just overall for the district, of just kind of how things are going.
Well, especially if we, from the very first time I was a principal, I kind of lashed on, as a middle school principal, said something called ACT Explorer, and this is the real deal, this is what's telling us how kids are doing. And we had to caution that we weren't overemphasizing that test or that standardized test. We were talking about the student as a whole, things too, and make sure we're doing that. But we can do some of that with the perception data as well. But I've always been about transparency on that front. Let's get it out there. Culture and things people can feel. You're not hiding that. You want to get that out, give it air, and let people see where strengths are, where weaknesses are, and let people know how we plan to improve. So I'd be certainly glad to do that.
And anecdotally speaking, we noticed as the year went on and teachers were more aware of what we were doing, that the teachers were delving into their data a whole lot more. And they were meeting with us to make changes, like what can I do to, they would look at a point that maybe they weren't happy with a certain score or whatever. They wanted to meet with us to try to improve their data individually. And so I can't help but think that those individual meetings eventually, it'll make a big difference. And before, I think because we were printing off a lot of reports and just going in and talking, it's a lot, it's really overwhelming when you're teaching to have all these numbers in front of you and these bar graphs and you're trying to figure it out. And so we have the time to sit and get that and prepare it in a way that makes sense to the teachers.
Daisy chefs. Get it all right.
Thank you all.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Any public communications for items on the agenda? Consent agenda? It's the recommendation by Superintendent Chavez that the Board of Education approve and adopt acceptable programs for immediate implementation of appropriate actions presented. Approval of regular meeting minutes from July 11, 2022. treasurer's report, those are from the month of July 2022, and reviewed by the treasurer, month of July 2022, professional hiring, Amber Bowie, Ferguson Woods, special home education teacher. And finally, 2022-2023, right, order rates for pay and admission prices. Do we have a motion? So moved. Support. Moved and supported. Discussion. Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent agenda is approved. Public communication for items not on the agenda. We have a few of those. Jim?
I'm not used to being here. Third matter, wait a minute. I come to you, that's a good plan. Okay, that's a good plan. But I would caution you on making sure you understand the definitions within that plan. There's a lot of definitions, there's a lot of words. I'm defining what that means. This plan is so good, it lets you clearly understand the definitions. Okay, I'm here tonight because one of the things that I wondered about is why did CRT accelerate so rapidly within the society? This is the only society that's really accelerated in it. It's not Europe, definitely not China, it's not Japan, I know that. So I've done a lot of research because this is an issue that parents are concerned with, you should be concerned with. Concerning this whole issue, if you look back 5 years, today, now girls are being called boys, boys are being called girls. I'm talking biologically. Boys can now have babies, according to congressional hearings. Elementary age children are being allowed to choose their sex. School children are being allowed to choose their preferred pronoun. Closing of schools for various reasons when the student age at 0.01 impact with COVID. Educators are accepting that the U.S. is systematically racist without definition. Without definition. Let me clarify that. Again, why has this happened so easily? Or is it because the U.S. educational system has a new religion that is being forced into schools by the educational industry? University educational departments, MSU in particular, education unions, MEA and NEA, pathetic, and their supporters. I propose that both educational schools in the U.S. as well as educational unions have become radicalized as defined by my friend Webster. That means a considerable departure from accepted, traditional, and known ways, since they want to make changes to existing proven and accepted views, habits, and conditions. These are elements of what is considered postmodern educational theory, from which CRT and its add-ons have been developed. Here's a book. It provides you the roadmap. It provides you how this started in Europe in the 1970s as a failure of communism, who did not take traction. So the theorists, most of whom unfortunately are French, took it upon themselves to find new ways of converting society to a more communistic, socialistic view. And just allow me to read a couple of these. And this is postmodern theory. The West has constructed the idea that rationality and science are good in order to perpetuate its own power and marginalize non-rational, non-scientific forms of knowledge production from elsewhere. Therefore, we must now devalue white Western ways of knowing for belonging to white Westerners and promote Eastern ones, that is more emotional, at least as defined by this book. And I'll follow that up just quickly. And unfortunately, I'm running out of time, but I'll continue this at a later time. Is that the four elements of postmodern educational theory, or at least what CRT has blossomed into? First, the blurring of boundaries, sexual boundaries, and other boundaries. the power of language. They're making new definitions for established words. This is all planned, folks, and it's in schools, as well as business, as well as politics. And again, primarily the U.S. Cultural relativism, you know what that means. One culture is the same as the other. Well, I take exception to that. And the loss of universal and individual in favor of group identity. So the individual can't exceed this, that little Bogle game. Somebody pops up, they hammer it down because it's the value of the group. So to the extent that the concern that I have is, much of this is fostered by the unions. If any of you have looked at the conference that was just held in Chicago by the NEA and the outcomes of that conference, let me just give you a couple things. They call them NBIs, New Business Initiatives. I find that laughable. This is a school. This is people that have students as their primary objective. This is not per se bare knuckle union. I've been in labor relations and industrial relations for 35 years. I know what bare knuckle is, okay? So let's not kid about it. And so I'll just share a couple because I don't have time. Yeah, here's one. NEA will take all this is NBI 41. I don't know if it's been approved because they haven't issued it yet. NEA will take all necessary steps to defeat and overturn the Don't Say Gay law in Florida. There was no Don't Say Gay law in Florida. And what is the union doing about this? Why are they doing it? What's their agenda? So, and I've got more which I'll share with you at a later time. My concern is, you as a board, this is a new religion. Meaning it's a cause, it has a system of beliefs held with ardor and faith, is now unchallenged in the classroom due to the authority of the teacher and administration as well as students. My concern with the school board is which board member is a liaison with the superintendent on union matters. Which board member is involved in DIE, meaning diversity, inclusion, and equity initiatives. Which board member has been assigned as a liaison with the teaching training? This is great. Curriculum planning is great. What's it mean? What are the definitions?
I'm not exactly sure where our time is, but I'm sure we're way over 3 minutes.
Okay, I appreciate
We
you.
respect our time.
One last one, just one last one. Which board member has actual experience in union relations from the management and the employer perspective? These are critical elements. If you wait too long, who knows what the next wave will be? And there are really wonderful teachers, but the union is not. The union is not for the teacher, the union for the students. It's for the teacher. And I'll add more material later time. Thank you for your indulgence, I appreciate it. And again, I cannot overemphasize reading of this book. It will open eyes. Thank you.
Chelsea.
Before I begin my comments, I just want to say that on the live streams, a lot of you are very hard to understand sometimes. So maybe make sure your microphones are on and the right thoughts. Okay. In June, the district unveiled the new 5-year strategic plan. It included what you have called belief statements, which you claim are the core values that will guide your work. And I was looking forward to seeing some of these belief statements in action. One of them says, involvement from students and families and staff in the community creates a culture of excellence. And that sounds exactly like the type of collaboration that many of us have come to these meetings asking for. But at the July meeting, just weeks after the district unveiled this new plan, the superintendent revealed that she, without board or community knowledge, let alone any board or community input, has once again developed a new COVID masking quarantine plan. Shauna said it was presented just as an FYI, that she was merely informing all of us, including the board, and that she did not need any input. Everyone in this room knows that that isn't true. But even if it were, didn't the district just state in June that community input is of vital value? If you mean that, why wouldn't you seek input whether it was required or not? Why was the plan developed in secret by a bunch of unelected bureaucrats and handed down from on high rather than done collaboratively with the community and the school board? Another alleged core value of the strategic plan is that DeWitt evaluates and uses resources responsibly to achieve our mission. I have to say the timing of this one was great. The plan was unveiled right as the situation with the books being discarded was unfolding, so we could all see in real time just how seriously we take responsibly using resources. But I'll ask anyways, is it responsible to send thousands of brand new taxpayer-funded books to the shredder for pennies on the dollar? Is it responsible to use a recycling program to purge brand new books that, quote, did not fit with current literacy programs or DEI efforts, which is a direct quote from Shauna on June 27th. Does anyone on the board think that that's responsible or even acceptable use? We know it wasn't, and we'd like to see some accountability on this issue rather than grossly inappropriate attacks from members of the board against concerned community members who acted to rescue taxpayer-funded materials when the district was hoping to let them be destroyed because they no longer fit a favored political narrative. But in any case, the attack against Mr. Cooley, if it was Cooley, was truly about money, truly about the money the recycling program would have brought from these books, or about some unhinged theory of theft on the part of a taxpayer objecting to waste, let me talk about those ideas. In March, the district charged me $389 for this tiny little stack of paper, and claimed, with a straight face, that my FOIA request, which sought only the communications between Shauna and one other person regarding one specific issue, took 10 or almost 10 hours to process. There are just 9 emails and 1 text exchange here. A lot of the paper in here is just attachments and email signatures. $389. If theft is a true concern, then maybe someone could look into this. Or if fundraising is a real issue, then surely the district recouped whatever it was hoping to gain from destroying those books on these FOIA fees.
We're overturning this now.
All right. I just want to say that the strategic plan sounds nice. If you followed it, it might even be nice. But in just weeks, you've shown us exactly how much you do.
Superintendent report.
I have several things to update you on.
Can you guys hear me at all when I'm talking to this microphone?
In the room, we can.
I will tell you, I was gonna comment on that too, because I watched some past board meetings. It's impossible to hear any board members on those recordings, so I don't know if
I
there's
think
gonna
it was
be better, but I can use, I hear you. Oh.
Yeah, we know.
My husband says the same thing. But I do think that maybe someone should look at it and see if there's anything that we can do.
Good.
Good.
No worries. So starting the year, today started with our summer school, and we have about 112 students in grades 1 through 8, and 17 teachers. So I know Brian was able to make it into the classrooms today, and I plan on making it in tomorrow, so it's exciting to have kids back in the classrooms as well as teachers. Fall sports officially started today, and then new teacher orientation is tomorrow, so we're looking forward to welcoming our new teachers to DeWitt Public Schools. As far as the strategic plan is concerned, under our goal of operations, we have, one of the sub-goals was to secure building substitutes for each building and increase the rates. We have done that, so our regular subbing rate is now at 150. And our building subs who are kind of, we call them our super subs, so each building secures one sub to have every day, and we always keep them busy. They'll be making the rate of 175 a day. For school safety, I've met with the chiefs, and we're still working on professional development to roll out to staff, and we're working on training resources, so I've secured scenarios as well as video resources that we'll be using with cabinet. Cabinet will be using with staff, and staff will be using with students to be able to talk about situations that are a threat to the school. And we're using, I've already received permission from a school in Vermont, so they have these training resources readily available. And then the safety task force plans to meet this week, and then we'll be doing an overview update for opening day for staff. For communication engagement, one of our sub-goals was to secure and train building social media liaisons, so I've spent Monday last week with a group of teachers. So we have a building rep for each of the buildings. And then we're also working, another piece of that was the student rep, and so we'll be working on that as well. It's not something we're able to put in place quite yet, but I'm excited to have the additional help with getting the message out and being able to share things that are happening in the buildings. And then We have the admin retreat coming up next week, and so half of the day is team building and leadership skills, but then the other half of the day, we're going to actually spend on, MASB calls them action plans. So each of our goals will have an action plan for all the sub-goals. And so everybody has a lead on those, and we'll be working on those. So we come up with an action plan for this year as far as all the strategies that we want to make sure that we work on implementing. And then enrollment right now is at 3117. And then our return to school plan, I did meet with Mid-Michigan District Health Department last week, and they are really working to move from pandemic emergency response to a more standard response. And I shared many of those resources with you, but anybody can go to the Michigan Health Department website and see the presentations and recording. And last but not least, a little bit of a bond update. So we're still meeting regularly with the owners, reps, Plant Moraine Cressa, Clark Construction, and GMB. The high school gym roof is scheduled to be done this week, so hopefully the rain holds off long enough for that. Maintenance building subcontracts are underway. The carpet and turf installation of the stadium is happening. Integration of primary power and design, and really figuring out how to get new enhanced power to the campus, so then that way all of our mechanical upgrades can happen. And we hope to wrap up the bus garage and Herbeson Wood designs this next month. And I've asked both GMB and Plant Moraine and Crescent to put together an outline and communication on the HVAC timeline as well as highlights. So that's to come soon.
You sent out this week earlier, or last week, the MASB annual conference.
Yes.
So if you guys haven't been, it's really good.
No,
It's a full weekend. It's like 4 days, Thursday through Sunday. It's like 4 days of just training, but I feel like my first year on the board.
They're great workshops, and it's great. It's even better to attend in person because you're able to network and connect, but there is a virtual option as well.
Something we want to do is to do it with the
Yeah.
All right, a motion to adjourn. Support. Support. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.